Hello, let's start building our WakeUp Times app. In this video, we're going to start by creating an HTML file and adding the basic structure of the application, and also add a bit of a interactivity to this page using JavaScript. So I'm going to take this opportunity to teach you a little bit about HTML. So whenever you're visiting a website, the page that is being loaded is a HTML file. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And we're going to see shortly what it is and how it works. So start by, after cloning the repository, start by adding a file to it, index.html. So the extension .html says that this is a HTML file. The name index is just a convention. Typically the entry point to a website, that HTML file is called index.html. So after doing this, also open this file in a browser. So I'm just going to drag it here to the site to open it in the browser. And so at the moment, if you open it, there's nothing in it. It's a blank page. So let's go here and add a bit of a text. Hello HTML. Save this and then refresh this page, and you're going to see that this text is loaded. I'm going to zoom in several times here so you get a better view of this in the recording. So, well, what you see is that HTML basically is a text file, and browser is able to read that and render that. Now, every time I'm going to make a change to this HTML, for me to see those changes in the browser, I'm going to have to refresh it. We're going to fix this in future lessons, but for this application right now, we're going to continue working in this setup where every change is going to need a refresh. Later on, we're going to use some tools that will automatically refresh the browser for us when we make changes to the HTML file or other related files. Okay, let's go here and add a bit of a text. I'm going to put WakeUp Times, because that's the title of the app, and maybe put some description to kind of set up the scene. So it says, if you go to bed now, when should you wake up? And I'm going to save this and refresh the page again. And it kind of shows all the content. But one of the things that you probably notice is that there is no new line or line break between WakeUp Times and the next sentence that follows. Whereas in the HTML file, I have a new line. So in order to see this new line, there are a few different ways that we can go about it, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this in a paragraph. So notice that I'm using these things that I'm going to be calling them tags, right? So it's angle bracket, P is for paragraph. So this pair of angle bracket with a P is the opening tag. And the same thing, but including a forward slash, is the closing tag. So whatever comes in between is considered the content of this tag. And if you save this and refresh the page, you're going to see that I've got a bit of a formatting here. And that's because of these tags that I provided. So HTML contains a lot of these sort of semantic tags, and your browser by default applies some styling to them. So for example, if you write things and organize them in paragraphs, HTML, the browser is going to throw in a bit of a margin before them and after them, so that you get a nice formatting. Here's another thing, like WakeUp Times, I want this to be like a title of the page. I want it to be more prominent, so I can use H1 tag. H1 means heading, and the 1 for it is heading level 1. So you can go all the way to level 6. If you do that, you can see that the title is more prominent, and this is the most prominent. If I go number 2, this is going to be a bit smaller, right? And so you can go all the way from heading 1 to heading 6. All right, so these tags are what we call, or what is the markdown, markup. The markup in hyperlink markup language, which is HTML, right? These are the markups. So that's where the markups come in. Now, the way I wrote this is, it has very little structure. If you want to actually write a proper HTML file, you would have to structure it like this. So this at the very top is a special tag. It's a doc type, which specifies what is the document type. that the browser is looking at. Now, browser is generally good at recognizing it itself, but still is considered a better practice to let the browser know that it is looking at an HTML file. And then HTML follows certain specifications. So for example, everything that is in the HTML file, it's supposed to be wrapped in a HTML tag. All right. And then you kind of nest these elements, these tags, and create a sort of a hierarchical structure. So like this is the head area, which usually you put in some metadata about the page. So stuff in here is not going to be displayed on the page, but it sort of plays a supporting act. And then everything that goes into the body is the stuff that gets displayed here in the page. And these lines that are highlighted in green is how you write comments. And so browser is going to ignore anything that follows this particular format. So now I'm going to expand on this and add a bit more. So let's take a look at what I have prepared for us. Let's save this and refresh the page. And so we've got some stuff in the head tag. So I have some metadata that says, for example, that this page uses Unicode characters. I have something about viewport, which is particularly useful if you open this in a very small screen, like on mobile. I have a title. This title is that when you open up a page, if you look at the tab, the title that goes in the tab, or like in my browser, if you hover the mouse here and wait a little, it's going to show the title of that page. It says WakeUp Times. And then anything that goes in the body is being displayed here, including what you're looking at right now is a button element. So it's not just semantic sort of describing the layout of what kind of text you have, but also you can use other things like button inputs, radio buttons, and you've definitely seen forums, online forums, that you can key in information. So this button, it has some minimal styling and it kind of looks like a button and you can click on it, but it doesn't do anything at the moment. And the next thing I want to do is to go and add a bit of interactivity to this button. So let's go here, and a button tag has an attribute called onClick, and as the name suggests, this is where you can tell the browser what should happen if somebody clicked on this button. And so and you're gonna say like this is equal to, and you need to write a string, and what you're gonna write here is actually needs to be JavaScript code. It needs to be valid JavaScript code. So for example, what we can do is we can do window alert and put some message here like boo. So if I go now, refresh the page and click on the calculate, you can see that it gives me this boo alert. Right, so let's say okay here. Now what we can do is we can go add a little bit more. So in addition to giving an alert, let's say a console log. So let's put like bam. So I want a boo and bam, and in order to see this one, we're gonna have to open the terminal, the console log. So I'm gonna refresh this, make sure that I'm using the latest version, click on calculate. So you get your boo, and then you get your bam in the console log as well. All right, cool. So if I wanted to calculate all the wake up times, I would want to like write that code down here, but that's going to be at least about a dozen of lines. And you can imagine in any serious application, it's going to be way more lines of code that you will have to write. And so this is not a sustainable strategy to kind of like inline all the codes that you want to write here. What we can do instead is we can add this special tag called a script that's going to allow us to write some JavaScript code here. So I can take this out, go here, put these lines, and what's more, what I can do is I can wrap these two in a function. So let's make it a function. Let's give it something like handle click. That's a good name for it. So then we can say, you know what, if somebody clicked on the button, call this function. That's what you're gonna do. And so now this function could be many lines of code. And so let's save this, let's refresh the page, run it again, and it should do exactly as what it did before. All right, great. Here is another way that you can program this. You can also use this area to get hold of the elements in your page. So you can use JavaScript to do that. So when you write JavaScript in the browser, the browser exposes what is called a document object model, or DOM, and there's an object called document. And you can use this to go through all the elements in this page. And so there are some good handy methods in there that help you to get hold of an element quickly. There is, for example, get element by ID. And so for this to work, we need to give an ID attribute to this button. So instead of an onClick, I'm going to give it an ID and give it a name, something like, let's say calc for calculate and btn for button. And then we're going to give this name here. And so what happens is that this call is going to get hold of this button, and we can store that in an object, in a variable. Well, let's call it like calc btn, right? And then we can go and say calc btn dot onClick, and then pass this function to it. So this should do exactly the same as before. Maybe we can change the messages just to show that it's actually our code working. So let's refresh this page, run it again. So it does a BAM alert and a boo console log. All right, beautiful. So this is a very quick demo that shows what HTML looks like and how you can add a bit of an interactivity to it. Now I want to wrap this recording by pointing out something that maybe you paid attention, maybe it has escaped your attention. Notice that here I'm not putting the parentheses in front of it. Right? This is not a function call. Right? I'm not calling the function. I'm passing this function as a value here, and I'm saying that the browser knows that when somebody when somebody actually clicked on the calculate button, it needs to call whatever this function is. Right? It needs to call whatever this function is. Earlier in here, like if I just duplicate this, when I was doing onClick and I wanted to, inside this string, I wanted to pass this, I actually did a call. And the reason I did that is when you write it like this, and you give it a string, it takes that string and it treats it as a body of onClick function. Right? So effectively it's something like this. Imagine if I had something like function onClick a string, right? When I write it like this, whatever comes in this a string, it goes here. It goes inside this body. So if I want to actually call another function, I have to do it this way and then pass this here. So this would still do the same thing. It's just a little nuance different, that it's like a gotcha that, it's all too easy. You would put a parenthesis and you see it doesn't work. Now we'll speak more to this in future lessons. This has to do with the fact that functions are values in JavaScript. But for now, just keep that on your mind, that there are these little things that it may not make a whole lot of sense, especially if you're coming from other programming languages like Java and C++, but we will demystify all of these when moving forward.